we return to the ever-detailed, glorious world of Red Dead Redemption 2, and as the sun gently rises on this land, I endeavour to return to one of this game's most grisly discoveries. And there are many of these in this game, but none are quite as gut-wrenching as the sight of an entire family deceased and decomposing in their own home. As you can tell from the title, this particular home can be found in the region of New Hanover, to the east of Emerald Ranch, to the unassuming quaint abode of Osman Grove, where at a glance nothing seems awry, but any inspection deeper than a passing glance will tell a story significantly more harrowing. So grab yourselves a brew and a pack of your favourite biscuits, sit down, relax, and join me as we revisit Osman Grove. As I was saying, to find Osman Grove, one must venture just to the east of Emerald Ranch, a place known for its own bag of mysteries that may yet prove worthy of a revisit itself. But when riding eastward, you may feel the temptation to cut into the woodland, and it's in doing this that your travels might bring you to the home in question. At a glance, it seems like a fine, modest chicken farm, surrounded by a surplus of crisp, rural quiet. But what's this? Thick clouds of smoke barely escaping the house. Somebody must really love their cigarettes. One could leave it at that if they preferred in theory, but where's the fun in that? To investigate further, we'll need to gain admission to the house, and in attempting to accomplish this, we'll learn that it's locked. So we can either walk away, boot the door in, or pick the lock. And once we're inside, things get ugly. Very ugly. As our eyes adjust to the darkness, we're met with the gruesome sight of a family of 5 deceased. A father slumped over the dinner table, a mother collapsed on the wooden floor, a smashed plate she was no doubt once carrying laying before her, an older man, presumably a grandfather, dangling from the attic that appears to have served as the family's sleeping area, a grandmother in her rocking chair sitting, lifeless, and perhaps most heartbreaking of all, a young boy, keeled over his cherished rocking horse, his final expression obscured from view. So naturally the question turns to what caused the deaths of these people. After all, I doubt the chickens in the pen outside will tell us, but that's okay because the answer appears obvious. The family bear no injuries. They simply slumped, died, their locked, secure home becoming their tomb. Nothing inside the house indicates any foul play. This is definitely not the result of a massacre. The only thing untoward about the house is the smoke spewing out of it from the cracks in the doorways. But interestingly, not the chimney where you naturally would expect the smoke to be coming out of. Within the house, the culprit of course reveals itself as the chimney of the fireplace. It appears to have broken, spewing poisonous gases into the house. The deduction to be made then is smoke inhalation must be what got the family. Not the smoke we see, however, as we can stand here, in the house with the doors closed, and we don't seem to be dropping dead. With the fireplace extinguished, this smoke appears to be the aftermath of a fire that once burned. So, these people's passing must have been the result of incomplete combustion, the production of carbon monoxide, a silent, invisible, odorless gas notoriously difficult to detect and is highly poisonous. It binds to hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells responsible for carrying oxygen around the body. Thus, relatively quickly it deprives the body of the oxygen it needs. First, it causes headaches, dizziness, nausea, fatigue as your body appears to just feel heavier. One affected grows disoriented, quickly escalating to unconsciousness and death. And in some instances, this can only take mere minutes. The gas is known as the silent killer. By the time this family noticed something was wrong, they could very well have already been too weak to save themselves. That's about as far as my previous video went. It does seem like an open and shut case, with precious little cause to investigate further. After all, it just happens to be a sickening example of environmental storytelling to accompany finding this Otis Miller dime novel even if it does distract from the page-turner that I'm sure this book is. But there's something worth noting about what's wrong with the chimney. I wouldn't say it's broken in the traditional sense. It's not cracked. It's not come loose, allowing poisonous gases to escape into the house. It's completely decoupled halfway up. My point is, though it could very well be an exaggeration of this, it doesn't exactly look like wear and tear of a poorly maintained chimney. Sure, it doesn't appear to be of the most robust build quality, after all it killed everyone here, but if you asked me, it seems dislodged rather than damaged. So, what could cause this? Well, up the damaged ladders that we cannot actually climb, there's a sleeping area upstairs that the chimney passes through. Perhaps somebody knocked it in their sleep, thus causing it to dislocate and nobody noticed before they lit the fire. An honest accident leading to danger. Smoke inhalation deaths were hardly uncommon in the 19th century, so perhaps we need not look further than that. After all, in that instance it serves a narrative purpose, highlighting how seemingly banal things can kill us, and that's never not a worthwhile cautionary tale. But if you'd humour me in chucking on the tinfoil hat, what if the damage to the fireplace that eventually led to the deaths of 5 presumably innocent people was done deliberately, an act of sabotage, if you will? Who could have perpetrated such a thing? For this we need to consider 2 things: who we can place here, or nearby to here, and who would realistically possess the intelligence contemporary to the late 19th century to utilise such a seemingly inefficient method in a murder plot. After we've considered those 2 things, we also need to ask the question, why end the lives of a random harmless family in the woods? Particularly in such a way that wouldn't guarantee a result, so in that respect it doesn't make sense. But what if we re-evaluated the crime scene a bit, if we're going to view it as a crime scene, that is? Because the question that's obstructing this train of thought is, why would somebody kill people in this way? Not only because it's unreliable, but also because we have to view this scene in the context of 1899. The principles of what we presume killed these people are far less understood, versus modern times where I'd imagine it's still not an awfully popular modus operandi. So if we're going to pursue the suspicious route, let's eliminate this. Could it be possible that the smoke is a literal manifestation of a smokescreen? Simply the aftermath of a fire left to die on its own, because everyone else died first, and our new friends actually died from a very different cause. Something perhaps that emulates similar effects to carbon monoxide. You see, the origin of the smoke is actually an oven, an old stove, for the purpose of cooking meals. It would seem a meal was successfully cooked before these people died. Not only that, it was consumed. This means, were the fire the culprit, they were exposed to it for a long time before they gave out. Yet they'd happily had a scoff and then dropped dead soon after. So could it therefore be something they all collectively ate or drank, as opposed to something they inhaled? A theory I've seen floating about online posits they were poisoned. The poisoning aspect may seem to be in no doubt either way, but I mean deliberately. Not much has gone into the theory by the looks of things, but it's worth considering when you note the condition of the home in Red Dead Online set the year prior. Do your best to not mind the hat. I think it's very masculine. In the house in Red Dead Online, the family aren't here, they haven't died yet, and the presence of the rocking horse indicates the home was in their possession at this point. But behind the man whose curious presence here in their stead we'll address in a moment, you can see the chimney to the stove is already paggered. They lived a long time cooking with a carbon monoxide time bomb, and you could argue that most people who ultimately succumb to such things do, particularly in a domestic environment. But you could also use this chimney disconnect being present for so long prior to the incident that ultimately killed these people as proof that it perhaps wasn't what sealed their fate. Now, I'm not too sure how seriously to take the details noticed in Red Dead Online, as Rockstar may not have left this deliberately, rather for the purpose of the online service saw no reason to change it. But it is nonetheless interesting we see the chimney in this state and the black soot-stained wall behind it, indicating the stove was used prior to the fateful day quite considerably. It eliminates the possibility the chimney was sabotaged in an attempt to kill, but we've already rationalised why that perhaps wouldn't make the most sense. However, this would probably also eliminate the idea that the damage to the chimney went unnoticed by the occupants. That doesn't necessarily mean they were immediately aware of the danger it may have posed, but we know whatever inconvenience it was, the family put up with it for a while. So there's enough doubt, however unintentional, to entertain the idea of an alternative cause of death, such as, of course, a poison consumed as opposed to inhaled, one that perhaps affects the body in a similar way to carbon monoxide, one that impairs the body's ability to use and transport oxygen, resulting in a swift death. For instance, a reasonably popular one, cyanide. Common and easy to come by in a 19th century domestic environment, but its existence alone does not make it a more attractive version of events than the simplest answer for how these people may have asphyxiated, given the information. So could there be other details for us to lean into? Say for instance the fact that throughout the cabin we can't find anything of real monetary value, save of course for perhaps a fountain pen. Perhaps this is because the people who lived here lived a modest lifestyle. That much is apparent. So you could make the argument that more grand earthly possessions were beyond their budget and in failing that, their interest. But since such findings in other cabins throughout the game are nothing short of abundant, it may very well be a noteworthy clue that things are in fact missing. Perhaps the place was robbed. And of course it is a lot easier to take from the dead than the living. Could poisoning prove more efficient here than a good old-fashioned cold-blooded gunpoint robbery though? Maybe, if you intended to keep it quiet. After all, the house is within eyeshot of a frequently travelled route as indicated by the mud trails left behind in the grass by countless wagons. Naturally, an intelligent outlaw will want to avoid attention. Thus, a loud approach would be too risky. Also worth noting is despite both doors to the house being locked, I could not find a key inside anywhere. There are no signs the occupants fought against the doors or attempted to claw their way out in any capacity. But perhaps they were aware of their chimney problem and would opt to cook and eat with at least one door open, as a means to ventilate the place. It is logical, after all, we know they'd put up with this damaged stove chimney for a while. Meaning following their passing somebody had since entered the house, done and taken what they'd come for, and left, locking the doors, to make the smoke appear to be the culprit. It's an interesting thought, though I entirely suspect it sounds a bit too elaborate, particularly for a time before forensics, provided there are no witnesses, and no survivors, and you aren't caught red-handed by the authorities and put some distance between yourself and the crime scene, covering your tracks as you go. There would be precious little reason, particularly in the middle of nowhere, to give your crime the appearance of an accident. At best, this approach buys you some time before anybody notices something is wrong. At worst, it merely overcomplicates the process of a smash and grab. However plausible it may be, it would require a very collected, methodical criminal to pull it off. And to top it all off, they'd need the opportunity to dose the family with a poison. Perhaps the ruse of a friendly traveller, simply seeking shelter and a meal. You didn't think it would escape my notice there are more deployed plates than there are victims here. This may very well suggest the possibility they were entertaining company, and perhaps said company slipped something into something they ate or drank, swiftly resulting in their hosts' deaths. To what end? Who knows? The next question to entertain is, are there people we know about in the area who would carry out such a gruesome thing? Well, should you set up camp in the area, you may receive a visit from some less than savoury gentlemen.
Y'all niggas Murphy Hills. You should be careful where you're camping.
We know the Murphy brood is active in the area, an antagonistic faction notorious for their unbelievable cruelty. They're highly territorial, uncivilized, and let's face it, hideous. These human horrors seem to enjoy inflicting terror and agony, but they have no qualms with being notorious for their actions. They'd have no reason to make Osman Grove look like an accident were they involved. I have no doubts it would be a much more brutal scene. But there is one outlaw we can definitively place at Osman Grove, at least once upon a time. Introduced in Chapter 6 of the main story as an associate of Micah Bell, we know for certain that Joe has at the very least been physically present at Osman Grove, because in Red Dead Online this cabin is where we find him. He functions as a mission provider. He offers paid killings, coach robberies, thefts, assassination missions, all of which give negative honour. As part of the Blood Money update, he also functions as part of Guido Martelli's criminal network. It appears he's hiding out in the cabin, on the run following committing a murder. As for the whereabouts of the family, it's unclear. The presence of the rocking horse, the rocking chair, and other homely possessions in this gutted variant of the house suggests that it's very much so the family's property even at this point. But perhaps they're away at this time, visiting other relatives, family, friends. There's no telling. All we know is they're not here and they haven't died yet, but in their stead is a hardened murderer using their grove to lie low. Could he then be responsible somehow for their deaths? It's unclear. He's one of the few characters in this game that doesn't really possess much of a gaugeable personality. Outside of greeting and antagonizing him, and one aloof standoffish confrontation with John Marston before he's promptly sent to hell, he isn't much of a talker. All we realistically know about him is Micah Bell vouches for him, and that only really indicates he's a cold-blooded killer. But would he kill without reason? Would he kill an entire family? Would he go to elaborate lengths to ensure it didn't look like murder? We don't know. But there's nothing that necessarily indicates he would, or even possesses the intelligence to do it this way. He's simply portrayed as one of Micah Bell's dumb guns. The strong element tying him to Osman Grove was the fact he was physically there, for a prolonged period presumably. But even for an outlaw, that does not equate to a sound reason to kill an entire family of people. And how these people appear to have died would contradict any confrontation that might have arisen from them discovering Joe using their home as a safe house upon their return. I would anticipate such a scene to be much bloodier. The only way I picture that being avoided is if Joe was gone by the time the family got back from wherever they were. It's doubtful he would have been able to befriend them. After all, what little we do know about Joe, we know he's not a winning hearts and minds kind of chap.
Don't say much, do you? Guess not.
And if he's already on the run for a murder, would he realistically risk coming back here to carry out a robbery? Never mind an elaborate one that results in the deaths of 5 people, who need to then appear as if their death was caused by a trusty stove that finally let them down. Beyond Joe and the Murphy brood, there may, for all we know, be somebody else who was active in the region who would be willing and capable of pulling such a thing off. But we don't have the privilege of knowing them. And that leaves us with little choice but to return to the more obvious answer, that this family fell to the sinister invisible silence of carbon monoxide. It may very well be an innocent, less interesting way to go, but I don't think our dive down the rabbit hole of loony conspiracy was entirely wasted. It's a lesson in how we rationalize these horrific things. Sometimes dreadful things just happen, and we'll naturally scramble to find a sinister explanation, something or someone to blame. But such dark motives and evil actions aren't always required for terrible things to just occur. But even now, there are just some aspects to Osman Grove that in my mind just don't seem to tot up. Perhaps these details weren't intended to be interpreted this way. But if this game has repeatedly proven anything over the years, it's the sheer volume of details that are left to our interpretation. So I must now pass this question on to you. What do you think happened here? A simple instance of smoke inhalation? Or perhaps something more twisted and deliberate? But with that, I must end this video, as I can certainly see it's probably outstayed its welcome. I've missed this game. These past few months I've taken a bit of a break from it. There are some topics to still cover here and there, but I wanted to space them out a bit. I also don't plan on revisiting every topic under the sun with regards to this game, particularly not based on quality alone, as where would I draw the line with that? Because if I intend to constantly improve what I do here, I fear I'd just run the risk of becoming an endless conveyor belt of the same 5 things. But for topics where I feel the details weren't adequately encompassed in my previous videos on them, I may very well consider touching down on those, as I have for various topics prior to this point. But I'd like to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would, of course, be massively appreciated. Only if you want to, of course. I'm not in the market of forcing people. I hope to be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care, and goodbye.